All right, I'll just do a quick visual check that you guys are able to see my slide. And we have quite a bit of content to cover, so we'll get rolling. Awesome. So today's topic is AI search and external content connectors. No product management presentation would be complete without a safe harbor statement. So we are looking at existing functionality as of our most recent July 31st release. If there's any forward-looking statements, I will explicitly call those out for you, but any purchasing decisions should be made should be made based on existing functionality. Just a quick housekeeping items. First of all, we have saved some time for Q&A. I will try to answer Q&A as in line as we go through it because it may be contextual. However, we will definitely have time at the end for general Q&A as well. This presentation will be recorded and shared, so no need to do explicit recording yourself. And after the event, you will be prompted to fill out a brief survey. Please do so. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what topics you may be interested in. Your feedback is very important to us. And don't forget that Live on ServiceNow is an interactive ongoing series. You can see the schedule by scanning the QR code. A link will also be provided today in the chat. So please do join us for future sessions as well. My name is Andre Ramstrand. I am a principal product manager in our AI practice group. And today we'll be joined by some of my outbound colleagues who are on the enterprise side. This includes folks like Joe, Alexander, Sentil, Somya, Vanessa. I also have my fellow outbound PMs as well, Eliza, Victor, Ashley here to help answer questions as well. So please do keep them busy. Our agenda today is, well, why do users care about AI search and external content and federating material? We start off by just reviewing what is AI search because it is the foundational capability upon which external content connector and now assist is built. We'll talk a little bit about our AI search RAG retrieval pipeline, and then we'll hook it in with external content connector as being a very critical source of information for RAG, for AI search, etc. So to a certain degree, we're kind of building the story in an inverse order. We're talking about the foundational capabilities, the generative AI capabilities, and then what are the data sources. So it's kind of a bit of an inverted agenda to a certain degree. So let's start off by asking, why do users care? And there's really one simple reason why users care about external content connectors. And the main reason is that they are seeking answers, not search results. If you've been aware of the changes in the search world, even in the consumer world, we're moving away from the idea of searching and looking through long lists of information, and we're moving to an era. I wouldn't say that search is dead, but the idea that we want to be given answers as opposed to scanning through search results. So just like in the consumer world, in the business world, users are seeking answers and not search results. And they're seeking those answers regardless of where it may reside. So whether that information resides in a SharePoint site or in a Slack feed or in product documentations, they just simply want the answer with the least amount of effort possible. But today, companies struggle. And why do companies struggle? Because they have many siloed systems, they have fragmented user experiences, and as users hop from system to system, there's a lot of complicated security and sharing rules that have to be maintained by different system administrators. So the question then becomes, how can we break down silos and unleash enterprise knowledge? And the way that we can do that is by introducing enterprise search. So enterprise search is our foundational search capability built on the ServiceNow platform. And there's a number of different aspects to enterprise search. First of all, you have native information that may be ingested into the search indices, and we'll talk about that more in detail. The topic of today is we're going to talk about how do you ingest external content from SharePoint, Google Drive, Slack, etc., into those indices. Now, once you have that information inside of our enterprise search engine, you want to be able to provide personalized response that could be based on the user's security roles, location, and increasingly, we're seeing knowledge graph play a role by being able to infuse contextual meaning into a user's query and hence filter the results. And then finally, Now Assist obviously plays a very important role because Now Assist is going to provide that synthesized response, that summarization. Now Assist is actually what is generating the answer to the user's question. So all three of these aspects of search come into play, and we're going to double click and have a look at them in a bit more detail. But before we do that, let's do some level setting with terminology. We'll start off with a little bit of a demo from a user experience perspective. So here we are inside of a portal. This it happens to be an employee portal, and we're going to execute some queries. Now, incidentally, the user experience that you're seeing in the portal is what we're calling the enhanced chat user experience, which came out in our most recent May release. And let's go ahead and execute some basic queries. The first query I'm going to execute is actually not based on not based on external content. This is just, we're going to simply ask a question about a user. We're going to say, what assets does Kate Fernandez own? This query is interesting because this is actually executing an AI agent and using a knowledge graph to get some answers. So you can see the flexibility of how we can use AI search to query information that may not necessarily be document or text-based information. So here's a quick query about Kate, about what assets she owns. Now, when you see it returned in this manner, you're going to hear me use the term synthesized response, right? So we asked a question and it synthesized a response or an answer for us. Let's do another query. This time we're going to ask a question about how do I get reimbursed for my tuition payment? Now, once again, we're going to do a query, and this time we're not asking a question about a user, but we're asking for information that may live natively in ServiceNow or may be indexed from external content. And once again, we are getting the synthesized response, including the citation. So from a citation perspective, you'll notice that this is an internal KB article on platform. You'll notice that this is an external document that was indexed. So this is where we're seeing external content connectors come into play. But once again, we're referring to this as a synthesized response. The other type of search experience that you may see is if I come in here and let's say that I ask a question like, what are ACLs? Access control list. Now, in this situation, this is not a synthesized response. This is what we call a keyword response. And you'll notice that the specific terms are being highlighted. And in this situation, we have information that's coming from a ServiceNow knowledge base, but we also have information via external content connector that is coming from ServiceNow docs. And if I click on the hyperlink, it'll pop me over to the ServiceNow documentation site, and I'll see the information about the ACLs. So to a certain degree, what we're doing is we're federating different data sources into a common search experience in order to provide an answer to the user with the least amount of effort. Okay, so that's a little bit about the user experience. There's a couple terms that I've used that I want you to keep in mind. The first term that I used was keyword searching, and the second term I used was synthesized searching. We're going to come back to those specific terminology in a little bit. But let's talk about what is the framework or what is fueling that search experience. At the heart of the search experience is what we call AI search. AI search is our on-platform search engine. It has the ability to index native platform information, such as knowledge articles, cases, incidents, problem change, etc. In addition to that, we do have the ability to consume external content. This could be SharePoint, Jira, Slack, and any number of other systems based on the connectors that are available. Regardless of whether you're talking about native information or external content, all that information gets indexed into our AI search indices. These AI search indices are a separate data store than your ServiceNow instance. They're highly optimized for parallel retrieval. They are purposefully encrypted to provide maximum data protection. Now, you may ask the question, what puts the AI in AI search? And what puts the AI in AI search, independent of Now Assist, independent of generative AI, is the fact that we monitor how you interact with the system. So there's a number of signals, like when we did the search, which tab did we navigate to? Did we use autocomplete? Did we select one of the top 5 answers? All of that signaling information is being gathered across all user population, and we use that to generate a relevancy model. And we do this every 30 days, and we tweak that relevancy model, and that becomes the relevancy model that subsequently gets used by the search engine to provide the most accurate results. And once again, that is independent of Now Assist. I will layer Now Assist back into the conversation in a moment. Now, AI search also is the foundation to determine which search experiences do we fuel. So for example, via AI search, you can configure different search applications, and these can be exposed in our global search, in our service portal, like we just did in the ECS portal, via Now Mobile. So it also controls what gets exposed in the mobile application. Virtual agent is a very common and popular interface or experience that we support. So Now Assist with virtual agent, which also includes the ability to synthesize response, is another experience. And then finally, workspaces. So once you ingest information, native or external content, you can configure where that information gets exposed in different experiences using AI search configuration. So let's pause there and see if there's any maybe questions that I might be able to answer. Can I explain knowledge graph in more detail? Yes. So you can think of knowledge graph as being a data abstraction layer on top of our relational database. And the powerful thing about having knowledge graph as a data abstraction layer is you have the ability to ask it questions in natural language, like what was Kate's most expensive asset? Which was the last asset she installed, etc. And knowledge graph does play a part in the retrieval pipeline that I'm about to talk about. What is the feature that you're using where you see the history 1 through 7?
They're talking about when you select what you copied and pasted.
Oh, oh, that is not a ServiceNow feature. That is a keyboard utility called Clippy, not named after the Microsoft paperclip, but it's another utility on the Mac. It's very good for demoing. If you live in the demo world, you will find it very useful. Yeah. Okay, I will come back to the questions in line, but let's talk a little bit about that synthesized response. So that wonderful synthesized response that we got at the top with all of the citations, that is generated by something called our RAG retrieval pipeline. And let's talk a little bit about the RAG retrieval pipeline. So you go in as a user and you submit a question and utterance. The first thing we'll do is we'll decide, is your utterance small talk? Are you asking about the weather in the neighborhood, etc.? Perhaps you are matching a previous action. So maybe this is a multi-turn conversation and you're following up. That may be a different type of interaction. We may perform some disambiguation. So if you ask a question such as, what is PTO? The system might say, are you referring to paid time off? Well, more than likely, you're looking for, you're submitting a question and you're looking for an answer. Now, we may rewrite your query. If it's a multi-turn conversation, there may be some query rewriting that occurs that may influence the subsequent query that we submit to the search engine. By the way, to an earlier question about knowledge graph is not depicted on the router box here, but knowledge graph does come into play. Like if it was a knowledge graph answerable question, it may come into the search pipeline over here. Now, once we've taken that query and we've adjusted it and tweaked it, the next thing we do is we perform what's called a unified search. And there's 3 types of unified search we perform. We search catalog items based on the short description. we search VA topics, and most commonly, we search text-based content. And what do I mean by that? We're talking about knowledge articles and external content. Now, how do we perform the search? There is a search methodology called hybrid search, and there's two ways that we perform the search. One is called semantic searching, the other one is called keyword searching. Keyword searching simply does searching by looking at the overlap between the question you're asking and the documents that may have the answer. So we look at things like word frequency, we look at things like how unique are the words in the document and in your query, and we perform a scoring. And that's how we do keyword searching. Semantic searching uses the concept of word vectors, which are words in space, and how related they may or may not be. So you may have a vector for the word queen and a vector for the word Freddie and a vector for the word Mercury. And because we know that Queen, Freddie, and Mercury point in the same direction, that they're related to each other. There's an embedding model that we use, there's a vector database. But what's most important for you to understand is that when we ingest content, regardless of whether it's native content or external content, we are creating these vector spaces in order to fuel the search engine. The way that I explain this to folks is I say, hey, think of keyword searching as being the top 10 country western songs. Think of semantic searching as being the top 10 hip hop songs. So then what happens is we get the results and we need to re-rank them. So we need to take our top 10 country western songs and our top 10 hip hop songs, and we're going to come up with the top 5 best songs, regardless of whether it's country western or hip hop. And then what we'll do is we'll take those best songs, perhaps that best country western hip hop song is by Beyonce, and we're going to pass that information to the large language model, and we're going to use that information. We're going to use the configured large language model, whether it's now LLM or GTP4o, and that is what's going to generate that wonderful synthesized response that we saw over here. So there's a lot of magic happening in the search retrieval pipeline, but it's essentially following this logic. Oops, sorry for hopping around on you. It's essentially following this logic. Ask a question, get the top results based on semantic and keyword, re-rank those results, pass it to an LLM, synthesize the response. Now, let's double click a little bit and talk specifically about external content, because external content is a very integral and important part of how information gets into this retrieval pipeline. So in January of this year, we wanted to make it easier for customers to ingest external content. We wanted to make it easier for you to break down those enterprise silos, and we introduced the concept of external content connectors. We're releasing pre-configured connectors to third-party systems. I'll go through the specific list of connectors that we have, but our goal is by the end of the year to have approximately 26 connectors available. It's very easy for you to set up the connectivity to these third-party systems. And once you set up that connectivity, you have the ability to define crawling schedules, to monitor those crawls, to apply security crawls and mappings, etc. And you can fuel the answers in the various responses that I just highlighted to you. So in January, the first two connectors that we released were SharePoint and Confluence Online. This was followed by another release in May where we added our product documentation, Google Drive, Slack, Teams, Jira. We also added what we call predefined web sources. So this was a collection of about 30 plus public available websites like Microsoft support.com, Google support, etc., that you were able to web crawl and expose within the ServiceNow experience. And as I mentioned previously, these external content connectors can be surfaced on standard VA search. They can be surfaced within the synthesized response, within the enhanced chat experience, etc. Now, this was followed by yet another release in July. We introduced the ability to index, have connectors for Viva, Box, OneDrive, a number of other third-party systems. And specifically, I would also call out that we moved from predefined web sources to custom URLs this was your ability to point it to a specific domain, a public domain, and have that index. So that could be your corporate domain, for example. Once it's publicly available, we could index that and make that available as an external content connector source as well. So let's talk a little bit about, actually, let me pause there before I go into the next demo. Let's see if there's specific questions that are highlighted. Can citations be customized to show the KB number? Yes and no. So the yes part of that is a native ServiceNow knowledge base will have a KB number. An external content source may or may not have a KB number. For example, it could be just a PDF file of invoices, as an example. So the pieces of information that you can customize, I believe, and I'll ask my outbound team to validate this, is the metadata that gets passed in via the external content connector. Those are the pieces of information that you could surface within the visual card that cites the reference to the source document. Is the relevancy model specific per customer, and also would it be specific per domain in a domain separated environment? Yes, good question. So the relevancy model is specific to your instance. If you're talking about the AI search relevancy model, it is specific to your instance. Maybe a corollary to that question, the embedding models, if you remember when I was talking about the hybrid search, the embedded models are also specific to your instance. And I will have to get back regarding domain separation. I believe that the relevancy model is instance wide. And when you talk about domain separation, there's the admin aspect of domain separation and the data aspect. Katie, I think we'll have to, was it Katie? Get back to you on that. We'll take that as a follow-up. Is it able to help a person know what catalog item they need to use in order for a new laptop, and better yet, walk them through filling out the form? Cheryl, that's a good question. So it is able to suggest which catalog item it should be utilized. Again, that's using the hybrid search. So when they say need a new laptop, the catalog item would be returned either based on the keyword matching or the semantic matching. In terms of walking them through it, that would be the catalog item or the VA interaction itself. That's not the AI search walking them through it. That could be the VA topic, or the catalog item would do that itself. Will AI search ever support the ability to search CMDB tables? I would like to be able to include certain classes of devices in AI search for global search. Yes, the CMDB question will that is I have heard that before. This is something that I think we'll need to parking lot and get back to you on that. There are certain table restrictions on AI search in terms of which tables. I'm not sure if it's been relaxed for CMDB or not. I think maybe one of the PMs may be able to assist in answering or finding that answer. Is this able to help a person? Okay, we already answered that one. Continuation on, is AI search retrieval also based on attachments on knowledge articles? Great question. So yes. So when you have a native ServiceNow knowledge article that has an attachment, if the attachment is less than 25 megabytes, we will look at the first 1 megabyte of that attachment when we generate that, when we generate the indexing of that attachment. So we will look at the first 1 megabyte to generate the keyword part as well as the semantic part. Okay, we'll come back to questions in a little bit. We have time near the end. Let me do an admin demo quickly, and then I'm going to talk about how the crawling and indexing works. So let's hop over to all right. So let's hop over to the instance and let's go into the admin screen here. All right. So the way that you would access the external content connector admin console is you would type in external content connector admin home, and you'll notice that we have quite a number of connectors, right? So I don't have Google Drive or Confluence or Jira configured, but you can add them. You'll notice that in this instance, I have a number of what we refer to as web sources. So we have web sources to the ServiceNow documents, to Citrix, to Google, etc. We have a connection to SharePoint. And from an admin perspective, you can easily set up this connectivity to the SharePoint system. Under settings, there are some connection settings. So you will have to work with your SharePoint administrator. I'll talk about this a little bit later to develop, to get some client IDs and tenant IDs. You'll have to get an encryption file that is utilized in order to handshake from a security perspective. You'll also set up what we call crawling settings. So these are the multiple sites on the SharePoint tenant that you may or may not want to be crawled. You can define which file extensions should or should not be included within the crawls. Over here, you have the ability to create a crawl. You can create two types of crawl. One type of crawl is an on-demand crawl, or you can schedule a crawl. If you decide to schedule a crawl, you can make the crawl daily, weekly, to specific time zones. And there's three types of crawls that you can execute. The first is a full document crawl. So that's where we'll go through and ingest the body and the text of the document, and we'll generate the indices, as I previously stated. You can do a partial crawl, which might be specific sites. You can also do a user mapping crawl, which is used for generating the security handshake between ServiceNow and the source system. Over here, you can see the crawl history. You'll notice that hey, my crawl finished. I was panicked and trying to execute a user crawl just before this session, and it took 21 minutes to crawl 11,000 user definitions. But this is where you can see a history of the different crawls. There's some analytics where you can see crawls completed, new documents crawled, documents updated, etc. So this is just a brief tour of what the admin experience looks like. Again, super simple to set up, very easy to set up crawling schedules and to monitor crawls. But what's more important, if we go back here, is to talk a little bit about how crawling works, because there's going to be a lot of concerns and questions about content security, our documents being copied over, things of that nature. So let's talk a little bit about how crawling works. First of all, you have an external system, such as SharePoint. Second, you have your ServiceNow infrastructure. So this is your instance, including some other compute infrastructure that we'll talk about. And we establish a one-to-one connection between your SharePoint tenant and the connector definition. Now, in the admin console, you are essentially controlling different aspects of the connection definition. You're controlling what user mappings are crawled, metadata, index sources, things of this nature. When a crawl starts, we launch a scheduler, and the scheduler will initiate the crawl at the appropriate time. Now, this scheduler is hosted in a Kubernetes cluster. And the reason why I mention that is that the performance of this infrastructure is very powerful. It's very elastic. It spins up additional compute in order to do the crawl in the most efficient manner possible. So when the scheduler decides that a crawl needs to occur, it'll determine which SharePoint site needs to be crawled, and then it will crawl. And if it hits a text or HTML document, it will natively ingest that into the AI search index. If it hits a binary document, like a PDF, Word document, Excel, it will index that information and pop it into the index as well. So the important thing to note here is we are not copying the document in its entirety into ServiceNow. We're simply taking an abstract of the title of the document and passages of information in the document, and we're using that information to generate the vector space that we will subsequently query when we do an AI search. And this is very important. So there's certain takeaways here. Connectors spin up on a dime. They execute the crawls really quick. There is no lasting live connection between the ServiceNow infrastructure and your SharePoint or external site. Only extracted text and metadata persist in AI search indices, not the documents themselves. So just to wrap this up, when you set up external content connectors will help unlock siloed data within your enterprise. But to make the dream work, you need teamwork. And what I mean by that is you need to make sure that your source system admin, that gatekeeper of SharePoint, is on board. They're going to care about security, API access, compliance, performance, etc. You will also need to work with a functional business lead. This is someone that understands the content accuracy, what makes content findable. They will also have some wonderful institutional knowledge about question and answer use cases that can drive deflection for your user population. You will also work with your ServiceNow admin, and that ServiceNow admin will ensure connector reliability, indexing, content security, and user experience. And if you were to remember just one thing from this entire presentation, with external content connectors, you will move from you'll say goodbye to silos and hello to answers. So your users will be able to realize the original goal that I said in the presentation, which was to enable them to find answers regardless of where they live with the least amount of effort. So thank you for your time today. There is additional material that we have in the community that is linked here, or you also have the QR. And I will move on to questions and answers that haven't been answered. Wow, 39 questions, awesome. Okay, let's talk a bit about how is entitlement and information being queried, i.e. how does ServiceNow know I'm allowed to ask the question? I'm assuming user criteria definition for KB articles and ACLs, task records, but what about APIs? Great question, Ian. So you're absolutely right. For native content like KB articles, we obey the on-platform security model. So ACL roles, user scripts, things of that nature. For external content, the way that security works is that there is a golden field, let's call it email address. That email address field will get mapped to the email address field on the ServiceNow side. And once we do that handshaking based on that unique field of information, that's when we can hook it in and say that this user belongs to this role, to this group, etc. Now, if you recall from the demo, we were surfacing the external content as a hyperlink with a bunch of descriptions. At the end of the day, when they click on the hyperlink, the security model of the source system will come into play. So it will trump, it will take precedence over the security model of ServiceNow, because at the end of the day, that user is validated against that external system as well. Is this able to help a person know what catalog item? Oh, we already answered that one. How does one activate this plugin? Great question. So you can download the admin experience. It can be downloaded, and you can activate the admin experience. The connectors will also be part of that suite. It's called the External Content Connector Suite. However, the entitlement to external content connectors is via a workflow data fabric SKU, because for every document crawled, there is a consumption of what we call a transaction, and there are a number of hundreds of thousands of transactions included with the respective workflow data fabric SKUs. So please reach out to your account teams for more information about that. Is external content connector using integration hub item they need to use in order to, oops, sorry, it hopped on me. Where did that question go? Was that answered? I think, sorry, that question disappeared on me.
I'm
the
sorry,
question.
Andre, I answered the question and it
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank
got
you,
back
Vanessa.
to the answered
Uh,
ones. Welcome.
awesome. We talked about how does it activate, so that was answered live. Oops, done. And is it able to know a person's yes? Answered live, done. And how is entitlement? Answered live, done. And with that, I believe we have completed. So thank you very much for joining our AI Academy. Do check out External Content Connector and see how you can move from silos to getting answers to your users. Thank you very much.